Welcome to our channel. Today we're diving into the fascinating world of Indian geopolitics. Now, some of you might be thinking Indian geopolitics sounds boring, but trust me, this is some seriously interesting stuff. That we're talking about a country with over 1 billion people, a rapidly growing economy, and a history that dates back thousands of years. And in the middle of it all is this guy, S. Jaishankar, India's Minister of External Affairs. Now I know what you're thinking. Another politician in a suit. But hold your horses. This isn't just some boring bureaucrat. This is a man who's been called India's most influential diplomat, a master strategist, and my personal favorite, the Ygritte of international relations. Okay, maybe I made that last one up, but seriously, S. Jaishankar is a big deal. So if you want to understand what's going on in the world today, you got to understand India. And if you want to understand India, you got to understand S. All right, let's start with the basics. India, where is it? Well, for those of you who failed geography, India is located in South Asia. You know, that giant subcontinent sticking out into the Indian Ocean, can't miss it. Now, you might think being a giant landmass surrounded by water would make you feel all safe and cozy, like a baby in a bathtub. But in geopolitics, it's more like being a delicious samosa at a crowded party. Everyone wants a piece. See, India sits right in the middle of some of the world's busiest shipping lanes. We're talking oil, gas, you name it. It all goes through India's backyard, and that makes India pretty important, strategically speaking. It's like being the bouncer at a club everyone wants to get into. You get to decide who comes in, who stays out, and who gets thrown out the back door. And let's not forget about India's neighbors. We've got Pakistan, China, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka. It's like living with a bunch of roommates who are all competing for the same bathroom. And trust me, things can get pretty messy, but hey, that's South Asia for you. Never a dull moment. Let's talk about India's relationships with its neighbors. First up, we've got Pakistan. Now, this is a complicated one. It's like that couple everyone knows who's constantly breaking up and getting back together. They've got a long history, a lot of baggage, and sometimes things can get a little explosive. Then there's China. They're like that super ambitious colleague who's always trying to one-up you. There's a lot of competition there, a bit of tension, but also a healthy dose of respect. Because at the end of the day, they both know they need to find a way to coexist. And then there are the other neighbors, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Nepal, Bhutan. It's a mixed bag, really. Some good relationships, some not so good. It's like any family, I guess. You love them, you fight with them, but you can't live without them. Now, let's zoom out a bit and talk about India's role on the world stage, specifically its membership in BRICS. No, not those colorful plastic blocks you played with as a kid. BRICS stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. It's like the Avengers of emerging economies, except instead of fighting bad guys, they're trying to reshape the global order. And India is right there in the thick of it, using its growing economic might to make its voice heard. They're pushing for reforms in global institutions like the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund, saying, hey, the world has changed and it's time for a new world order. And you know what? People are listening, because when you've got over 1 billion people in an economy that's growing faster than a teenager in a growth spurt, people tend to pay attention. Okay, let's talk about the man of the hour, S. Jaishankar. This isn't some career politician who climbed the ladder by kissing babies and shaking hands. This is a guy who's been in the trenches of international diplomacy for decades. We're talking ambassador to China, ambassador to the United States, foreign secretary. The man's got more frequent flyer miles than a pilot. He's known for his sharp intellect, his no-nonsense approach, and his ability to get things done. He's like the Liam Neeson of diplomacy. He's got a very particular set of skills he's acquired over a long career, and he's not afraid to use them. So when S. Jaishankar speaks, the world listens, because they know he's not just speaking for himself, he's speaking for the 1.3 billion people of India. Let's talk trade, baby. India's got a, look, we'll trade with anyone who's got something to offer attitude. They're like the cool kid in school who's friends with everyone, from the jocks to the nerds to the drama club kids. They've got trade deals with the United States, the European Union, ASEAN countries, you name it, they're probably in talks with them. Because here's the thing, India knows that in the 21st century, economic power is the name of the game. and they're not afraid to play the field to get ahead. Now let's talk about India's defense strategy. See, India believes in the whole speak softly and carry a big stick philosophy. They've got the third largest army in the world, nuclear weapons, and they're constantly upgrading their military capabilities. But they're not out there picking fights. They're more about protecting their own backyard and making sure no one messes with them. It's like that quiet kid in class who you know you don't want to mess with. They're not looking for trouble, but they're definitely not afraid of it either. Chapter 7. Playing chess on the world stage, India and the global powers. When it comes to the big boys on the block, the United States and China, India's playing a delicate balancing act. They're friends with both, but they're not afraid to stand up for their own interests. With the United States, it's all about trade, security, and that whole shared democratic values thing. With China, it's more complicated. There's a lot of competition there, some border disputes, but also a recognition that they need to find a way to coexist. It's like watching a game of diplomatic chess, with each move carefully calculated. India's been a member of the United Nations since the very beginning, and they've always been a strong voice for developing countries, pushing for reforms and a more equitable world order. They're also big on peacekeeping, contributing more troops to UN peacekeeping missions than any other country. They're like the responsible older sibling in the family, trying to keep the peace and make sure everyone plays fair. So, what has Jaishankar accomplished during his time as India's top diplomat? Well, for starters, he's been instrumental in strengthening India's relationships with key partners like the US, Japan, and Australia. He's also been a vocal advocate for India's interests on the world stage, whether it's at the UN, the G20, or the BRICS summits, but perhaps his biggest achievement has been to articulate a clear and assertive foreign policy for India, one that's based on national interest and a willingness to stand up for what's right. Some call it the Jaishankar doctrine. So, what does the future hold for India? Well, if the past few decades are any indication, it's going to be bright. India is on track to become one of the world's leading economies. Its military is only getting stronger, and its diplomatic clout is growing by the day. And with Jaishankar at the helm of its foreign policy, India is well positioned to navigate the challenges and opportunities of the 21st century. One thing's for sure. India is no longer content to be a bystander in global affairs. It's ready to take its place as a leading power, shaping the world in its own image. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more insightful content on global politics. We've covered a lot of ground today, from India's strategic location to its relationship with its neighbours, from its role in BRICS to the rise of Jaishankar. But this is just the tip of the iceberg. There's so much more to learn about India, its people, its culture, and its place in the world. So stay curious, stay informed, and most importantly, stay tuned, because India's story is just beginning.